It's 6 p.m. on July 9th, 2024. I'll call this meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals for the Town of Sterling to order. We'll take the roll call, please.
Matt Cantor, also present.
Diana Baldarelli, present.
Patrick Fox, present.
Joe Curtin, present.
Everett Pierce, present.
We have a quorum. First item on the agenda is an application or a petition for a variance filed by Brian R. Bootwell, seeking a variance for relief from the side yard setback requirements, the applicable section of the bylaw, section 301-251. And that's for the purpose of building a garage at a property located at 81 Meeting House Hill Road in Sterling. It's parcel ID number 7296. The property is located in the rural residential and farming zoning district. Mr. Ravini, I assume you're here representing Mr. Bootwell, and if you'd like to present his petition and how the petition will meet the requirements of Chapter 48, Section 10, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, this is Mr. Bolwell. It's a little bit of different phonetic spelling, but just so the record's clear, it's Mr. Bolwell. What I did for the board is I put together a pretty comprehensive petition, and I can walk through it relatively quickly because what I attempted to do is streamline the petition so that it would show the board what our intent is and how, in relation to our request for a variance, I think we quote-unquote check all the boxes. So as part of it, we gave you the floor plans of the proposed building, a pretty detailed rendering showing the elevations. We also provided an engineered plan that shows the location of the proposed garage within the setback, the impact on that setback, and again, we're only in relation to one side setback is about 8 feet. We also included, which I think was more beneficial than locating this underground pool that is somewhat problematic in relation to location of the garage. So we took a photograph, basically a Google Earth photograph to show that. And the last component would be where the septic system is located to the rear of the property, somewhat adjacent to the pool. So again, in relation to the petition, what I attempted to do is give you a narrative. I mean, I can read through the narrative, Mr. Chairman, if you like, but I think what I tried to do is basically establish that based on where the pool is located, we have a soil condition that for the most part will not allow us to put the garage in any other location, but we were showing on the engineered plan. In relation to the component about the effect in the community, this is a residential location. Again, the impact on the side setback is minimal, we're only 8 feet. If you look at some of the cases, they're a little bit all over the map when they talk about a variance impacting a setback. They kind of go by this 50% rule or less, so that the board can consider something less than 50% the setback as not being substantial. And then as far as the overall impact in the community, we're not going to increase any traffic. What we did is we reached out to all the abutters. We actually have the folks most impacted, which are the next door neighbors. The Browns are here. They're going to probably want to address the board about some issues we spoke about. But we did send out a mailing to all of the abutters with an informational package that showed, again, the renderings and the plan, asked for input. I don't believe we've received any response except for 2 neighbors stopped by and indicated that they didn't have any issues with the petition.
Now, you mentioned in the presentation there was a decommissioned pool behind the house.
So,
And that was a concern in terms of being able to locate the garage also. How about other areas in the property?
well, if you look at, again, the whole package, it would be somewhat difficult to put it behind the house because we have an antiquated pit system for a septic. So when you look at Title V, if that system failed, you'd have to have enough area offsetting that to install a trench system. So putting that structure behind the house would be almost impossible. And again, for him to excavate this pool would be just a monumental financial burden to put up the garage.
I know I've been by the site, and I noticed that on the side of the property, I think next to the Browns property, there's a section of trees. Is that on your client's property or on Mr. Brown's property?
That would be on the Browns property, most of those.
You agree, Mr. Brown?
I do.
Yeah. Okay. All right. All right, questions from board members?
So we're looking for a variance of the sidewalk
Just one side setback.
from 25 to 16.
Yes, actually,
There are no other options.
not from what the engineer and I have discussed over the phone based on several conversations. Again, getting into where that pool is located would just be a monumental undertaking.
What about the connection or breezeway or whatever you're calling it, between the house and the garage? That, I don't know how big that is. Is that existing now, or is that being built as part of the garage?
It's going to be built, and it's a good question. You just got to keep in mind, we're trying to keep it all in proportion so that basically the garage is not squished into the house. So the breezeway is a component of the garage.
How big is the breezeway? Do you know?
If you give me a minute, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to pick up that detail from the plan.
You know, I just wonder if there was no breezeway, would you be within the setback?
If you notice, if you go to diagram A, if you notice how the breezeway, the garage is actually, what the engineer tried to do in conjunction with the design people, they tried to basically push the garage, or the back corner of the garage as close to the property as they could. So when you talk about, you know, the breezeway, there's got to be enough room there to have some kind of an access.
Access, you mean between the house and the garage?
Right.
Looks like even if you could, you're probably not gonna get enough to get you inside the line anyways, right?
We might, you know, you might gain a foot maybe. And again, it's trying to keep in with the architectural design of the building and make it all fit.
You mentioned, Mr. Urbini, somewhere in your presentation, your written presentation, there'll be a 16-foot 2-inch of setback remaining to which the petitioner is prepared to install fencing and/or a hardy and sustainable vegetative landscape barrier.
Correct.
To the benefit of the immediate abutter. Is that something that your client and Mr. Brown have discussed, or?
I believe so. I believe that we had a discussion with the Browns a day or so ago about a drainage issue. I mean, they may want to speak to it, to the board, more specific, but we have no problem with a vegetation barrier or with the appropriate fencing.
Okay. Questions from board members?
What is the side lot setback for the Browns property? How far is their structure away from the property line?
We didn't measure that.
I would like to know that.
Maybe Mr. Brown can, do you have any idea, Mr. Brown? It's, from what I can tell from what
25 feet?
Yeah, it's gonna, yeah, what I can tell from what I've seen from looking at the various photographs, it's gonna be 25 feet or more.
Well, to meet the setback requirements, it would have to be.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Existing non-conforming.
But was it?
I don't know, there's a whole house or something, so it could be anything.
Yeah. All right, board members, anything else? You'll have a chance, Mr. Brown. Any other questions, comments from board members? Members of the public who are here, who have an interest in this petition, have a right to be heard, either in favor of the petition or in opposition. Anybody wish to be heard? Mr. Brown.
Thank you. In general, we're supportive of it. What we've seen is fine. The one concern I do have is drainage. And the drainage, Mr. Bellow's property, rather the driveway where it meets Median Hills Hill Road. Directly across the street is one of the outlets. It's an overflow from a detention basin from Interstate 190. So after several days of rain or extreme rain or hurricane, those detention basins fill up on 190 and the overflow comes down. There's a pipe they put under Mr. Roseberry's property. It comes up right there, right there at 190. Oh, yeah, sorry, right there on the 90 directly across the street. And about once a year or so, that overflow is considerable. Where water comes down, I don't know if you've seen Median Hills Hill Road, they fixed it this year quite a bit, but it used to look like white water rafting down there. Rocks being washed down, do would be a couple inches of water actually going down the highway, going down the road. My concern now is that on some occasions, the water could come down his driveway, and in the past, it would just go up into the backyard. If somebody goes into my backyard, it's water goes into his backyard. But if you're going to be putting up a garage or a structure at the end of the driveway, I would think that would block that. And so any of that water would come down the driveway, that would go someplace. And I'm just concerned that being close enough to the property line, that that's not going to end up in my house. One year it actually did. One year we had water in the basement. It came in. And I built up some walls around the windows down there to try to stop that. But I'd just like to see either a swale or something that says, okay, water coming down the driveway, we go off to the backyard.
Mr. Meany, I assume?
We have no problem with it. Mr. Boutwell has already done quite a bit of landscaping here,
Yeah.
taken down a number of trees. You guys agree with that, right? And he's already built somewhat of a swale. So I guess the plan would be when we're going through the design process, we'll get with the engineer, and if we have to build a swale, we can actually probably incorporate some riprap that would kind of break the water down and then curtail it all into Mr. Boutwell's backyard.
Yeah, is that
Appear to you to be sufficient, Mr.
Yes.
Brown?
so,
I mean, your client's prepared to work with
Not a problem with that. We'll deal with the drainage.
having that accomplished. All right, is there anything further? Either Mr. Brown or anyone else, any member of the public who wishes to be heard, either in favor or in opposition to this petition? All right, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Mr. Curtin moves to close the public hearing. Is there a second? Second, further discussion?
all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the vote is 5 in favor, 0 opposed to close the public hearing, and now the board will discuss and make a determination. Board members wish to be heard on the application.
I'll make a motion if you want.
I mean, I just make the observation, I think that the presentation, to my view at least, covers the requirements that are contained in section
There's enough there.
40A, section 10,
At the end of
to
the,
justify the petition.
and at the end of the day, by doing the garage, it could potentially be a betterment to the Browns property as well, if we incorporate that into the.
Well, could-
So we want to make a condition, is that what you're saying?
condition.
Yeah, I was gonna make a, can I make a motion?
Yeah, what was the condition you were?
No, that the swale is added to the, it's incorporated into the design to sufficiently handle the stormwater
Yeah.
running off the driveway and around onto the property.
We already mentioned the tree barrier. They're all on your property, Mr. Brown, right?
Yes.
So I presume you're going to leave, it's up to you whether you leave the trees there or not. All right. So I'd entertain a motion to allow the petition subject to the specific condition regarding the so-called swale, and also that the petition be subject to all applicable sections of the zoning bylaw.
So moved.
Mr. Curtin moves to allow the petition subject to those conditions. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Campbell's a second. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the vote is 5 in favor, 0 opposed. The petition is granted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
All right, the next item on the agenda is a matter about which Mr. Campobasso and I are going to recuse ourselves to avoid any potential conflict of interest, and Vice Chairman Curtin will conduct the hearing, and members, Mr. Bergeron and Mr. Testacosa can come in and participate as part of the panel.
See, after 6:10, the next is a special permit. Valerie Chase, trustee, has petitioned the zoning board of appeals seeking a variance for relief from the Town of Sterling Protective Bylaws, Article 302-2.2.46, abandonment or non-use to allow for a single-family house on the lot that is pre-existing non-conforming where the previous house was demolished in 2016. The property is located at 44 Kendall Hill Road, Sterling, parcel ID 106-24. The property is located in the rural residential and farming zoning district and is currently under Chapter 61B tax program forest. So with the applicant or its representative,
Good evening.
Basso.
Peter Campobasso, I'm here on behalf of Valerie.
Yeah, one quick question. In the thing, it says special permit, then it says a variance, but the application is for a variance, correct?
It's for a variance, yes. It's for a variance because the property lacks the required amount of frontage. I believe this is in a rural residential district, which requires 225 feet. The property currently has about 180, approximately 180 feet of frontage. So again, my name is Peter Campobasso. I'm an attorney with offices at 3 Park Street in Leominster, Mass. I appear tonight on behalf of Valerie Chase, the landowner. The property that's in question is 44 Kendall Hill. It's been in Ms. Chase's name since, I believe, 1978, 77, 78. And the boundaries are such that the frontage, this lot has been in existence prior to 1977. I think it goes back to sometime in the 60s. There was some type of a structure where they did some type of geo refinishing. The building's been there forever and a day. I believe it goes back to the 1800s. And it was an old building. Essentially, when she owned this property, she also owned 46 Kendall Hill. She lived as her residence in 46, and she owned the 44 property and rented that out. Sometime in 2015, there was some type of damage to the property. There was a water main apparently that had burst. And when that happened, between the inspections that she had done by the town, the property was in such disrepair that the recommendation was that she either do a complete rehab or knock it down and start over. Because the property was condemned, she did get a demolition permit. She did tear the building down. And then when she started to look into putting the structure back up, it was more than she could financially afford, and the property has been sort of dormant since. I have a couple of plans that have been on file at the Registry of Deeds which sort of demonstrate that the frontage has always been the same. And the hardship here is there's no ability to go to abutting properties to try to acquire the extra 20 some odd feet or 30 feet that's needed to bring the property into compliance. So that in and of itself, that creates a hardship in the sense that this lot has been the same for many, many years. But for the fact that she tore the structure down, did not reconstruct the building within the 2 years required by the bylaw. It was, as the building inspector pointed out, the use was abandoned and she lost her pre-existing non-conforming status. So once that happens, then the lot is subject to the bylaw. And because of I couldn't determine when the frontage changed in the town. I know that prior to 77, I don't think the frontage requirement was 225 feet. There was a zoning change at some point.
What was that?
96, I think.
186.
Yeah, it went to 180.
Okay, all right. So that's when the issue came. And I think based on This was the plan that was recorded at the Registry of Deeds based on the descriptions in 1977. And it's the lot in the middle. You can see the shape of the lot is such that this is the lot in question. And then in 2015, part of the back of the property was sold to an abutter. And based on the plan in 2015, prior to the building being raised, it's still the shape in the front. It didn't change and the lot just goes from there. So,
Is it 180 or 168 feet?
I wrote it down. Eyes do not work that well. On the plan is small. Yeah, you plus 78. There's 3 courses for the front, so that's the part that's.
Oh, there's a 13-foot piece in the
Yeah,
middle.
so there's three courses on the front. I know I calculated it.
181.
It was just over the previous requirement.
Yeah, it met the original frontage requirement. There is a section in General Laws, Chapter 48, Section 6. When there is a residential lot that previously conformed, once a zoning bylaw changes, if it's a 5,000 square foot lot, then the change does not affect, the dimensional change would not affect the conformance of the lot. So from a variance standpoint, the shape of the lot is unique in the sense that it has that very small frontage, the narrow shape, and then it opens up in the back. And I believe that it would be a substantial hardship and a detriment to not have the ability to reconstruct the property. And then based on the use in the surrounding neighborhoods, the intention is to reconstruct the single-family residential house that was there before. Might have to be relocated to meet the front setback and sideline because the existing structure was right on the road. So I believe that the elements for a variance exist in this case. If you want to go by the requirements in Section 10, it meets the 3 requirements. If you wanted to go based on Section 48, Section 6, with the change being just strictly a dimensional change, you could grant the variance that way.
Does the board have any questions?
I'd like to hear from abutters.
That's fine. All right. So if anybody wishes to speak in favor or in opposition of it, please, I'll call on you, just state your name for the record and
Yeah, Jim DeShano, 5 Chamberlain Road. Couple things. I don't see the 181, I come up with 169. Yeah, we're opposed to this. And by Rule 301-2-2-4, if it hasn't been built in 2 years, it can't be built. They can't get a variance for it. This was even, on June 13th, the Board of Health had a meeting, and the Board of Health basically said the same thing, that it wouldn't be granting a variance because the size of the lot, which is, I come up with 169, and the second part of this whole thing is the building was never replaced in 8 years. And it's an odd shape, if you look at it, it's an odd shape. 75% of that land behind here, they can't put a house behind here because it's all watershed. That's unbuildable. The other part of this whole thing is that if that land was cleared off, our lot is very, very wet. It's like a swamp in the springtime. Taking that land, taking all those trees out of there would really create a problem for us. Our sub pump runs all the time anyway in the springtime. Doing this would just, who knows what would happen after that. That's basically it, I guess.
Just so you know, on the plan that, attorney, you can get copy, this one is the recorded plan. And this one, as opposed to the one on the top, because I had the same question.
Right.
But there's this dimension, that dimension, and there's also a curve in the middle. You can take that, it's 30 feet, so it does have the previous frontage of the 180.
It still doesn't require the 225. And the rules are the rules, the laws are the laws.
Hello, I'm Christopher Tisdale. I live at 46 Kendall, the south side of 44, the complete opposite side that you just heard from. I'm also opposed to this. So I'm a Navy veteran of 11 years. When I left the Navy, I came to the home I live in now at 46, and one of the main reasons I wanted that property was because of the private backyard. It's very helpful for me to have a private wooded backyard. I enjoy nature, it calms me. It's one of the major things that's helped me quite a bit as I transitioned out of the military. So a couple of things. I didn't see in the plan where the house would be built, so I'm not sure if that would affect my private backyard. If this were approved, I would ask that there be some sort of condition that the private backyard that I currently enjoy would not go away. Again, I don't know, there was nothing, I pulled the records to see, I don't know where the house is planned to be located. Additionally, the owner of 44 Kendall, when they took the previous existing structure down, they did transition it to a Chapter 61 tax area, which reduced the tax burden on that owner. That increased the tax burden on myself and other members of the town to take care of the other things. And so now going back and being able to, get around that 2-year requirement, which is why this land was originally denied the ability to build a house, would be kind of a, as Judge Judy would call it, eating your steak and then sending it back. So for those reasons, I'm also opposed. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Deborah DeShano, I live at 5 Chamberlain Road. I'm speaking in conjunction with my husband. I have a real problem with this land because in regards to the topography of the land, once trees would be taken down, it would totally change the semantics of the water that would then leach out into our yard. It also would greatly hinder our privacy that we presently have. And I take regards regarding that. I'm very much a nature person. We have a very lovely lot. I don't want to take away from that. And building this a residential home, to me, would change the whole outlook of our beautiful landscape. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? No?
Mr. Curtin, if I may, just for a point of clarification, the lot itself was a pre-existing non-conforming lot when it went from the 180 to the 225. When the demolition permit was issued and the property was demolished, in order to retain that grandfathered status, the structure would have had to been reconstructed within the 2 years. The fact that it was not does not mean that the board cannot grant a variance. What the bylaw reads and what Mass General Law states is that because you abandoned the use, you are now subject to the terms of the existing bylaw. And because the lot is now subject to the existing terms, the requirement is you need 225 feet of frontage, and that's what the request is for the variance. So the board, it is within the purview of the board, if the board so decides, that you can grant the variance.
Go back to the question you asked about, or the part you said about the, with regards to 48 section, was it 6, with regards to the pre-existing lots.
Yes.
Expand on that a little bit.
So, 48 section 6 is a provision in Mass General Laws that basically sort of codifies pre-existing non-conforming uses, and it's sort of guidance to a building inspector on how to interpret what would be considered a pre-existing non-conforming use. And there are a number of cutouts, if you will, because the anticipation was, okay, there are going to be zoning bylaws that are imposed, or if you're in a town, it's a bylaw, if you're in a city, it's an ordinance. And as time goes on, those bylaws or ordinances may be amended, and, districts may change, uses may change, and dimensional requirements may change. There's a provision in 48 section 6 that says when it's a dimensional change, then the dimensional regulation would not affect a lot that was a residential home, single or duplex, and had 5,000 square feet of land or more. So this clearly has more than 5,000 square feet. It's about I believe the remaining parcel is about 6.5 acres of land. So that's one aspect of it. If you give me a second, I can try to pull it up on my phone so I can read it to you, so that you get the exact. And if need be, I can try to get the site and forward it to the board. The land was owned, as I said, she did own both 46 and 44.
So that technically triggered the merger thing?
Correct. There's a possibility that you could say that because it were contiguous lots and she owned both, it could be interpreted as merger. The building inspector didn't reach that conclusion. He just simply said it was a pre-existing non-conforming use that was abandoned. Anybody else have any questions?
So this other little lot is owned by Richard Robinson?
No,
Previous.
the
That's
lot,
who we bought our house.
the lots probably, ownership has probably changed. That plan, one plan that I provided, I think was done in 1977.
Okay.
The other plan, I think, was done in 2015.
Was this property at one time considered for a subdivision? This goes back to maybe the 70s or 80s.
I don't know.
I believe it was, because I remember the proposal would take the road down into the subdivision under the power lines and what have you.
I don't.
If I'm not mistaken, Brinkus has lived in that house that was taken down, so I'm dating myself right now.
She was the
She lived there.
person who lived in the
I
house.
used to live at 44.
At 44,
Yeah.
Right.
the house above it?
It was a rental.
Oh, okay.
Val had rented it for years and years and years since she owned the property.
Well, I would just make a comment. We've heard from abutters, and I think we're on pretty firm ground when it comes to the bylaw. And certainly on my short tenure on the board, we've dealt with enough animosity as a result of certain decisions that have been made that have compromised the zoning bylaw. So I, for one, would be one that would not be in favor of this variance.
Let's close the public hearing, we'll have discussion. Did you find that piece you're looking for?
Yes, it does mention, excuse me, any increase in area frontage, width, yard, or depth requirements of a zoning ordinance or bylaw shall not apply to a single or two-family residential use, which at the time of recording or endorsement, whichever occurs sooner, was not held in common ownership with any adjoining land, conform to then existing requirements and had less than the proposed requirement, but at least 5,000 square feet of area and 50 feet of frontage. Any increase in area frontage, width, yard, or depth requirement of a zoning ordinance or bylaw shall not apply for a period of 5 years from its effective date or 5 years after January 1st, 1976, whichever is later.
Let's close the public hearing and discuss it amongst the board. Public hearing, motion to close the public.
I would just have one further request. If the board is inclined not to approve the variance request, I would simply ask that you consider giving the petition leave to withdraw without prejudice.
All in favor?
All right, motion's made, close the public hearing. Public hearing's closed. All right. Anybody have any thoughts or?
I guess I'm struggling that, like, the bylaw is fairly clear on the abandonment or non-use in a 2-year period.
So the questions, do we vote or do we let them withdraw without prejudice?
To withdraw without prejudice.
I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make
I
a
mean,
motion.
is anyone is anyone leaning the other way?
I have an issue with, and I'm not clear on the legality part with regards to the being a pre-existing lot that conformed. Then when it got changed in 1998, because if you look at the lots over there, most of them are 180, 180, 180, because they conform to the thing. So I don't, I'm not clear as far as that thing, but I do think once the zoning changes, it still does lose its sort of grandfathering at some point in time. So, and then the whole thing with the merger or whatever, I'm not sure how that arises, but I would be inclined if somebody makes a motion to
So what does that motion do?
it would just let them leave and it doesn't lock the thing for 2 years or whatever it is. So if they want to
So they
pursue
can't
other
come back for
things.
2 years?
Yeah.
Right,
They
okay.
could come back for 2 years if they withdraw.
If they withdraw, they
If we
could,
vote
correct.
no, they can't, right?
So, I mean, if they had the money to come in, no offense, I don't know, I would entertain a motion to let the applicant withdraw without prejudice. done that before.
I'd make that motion.
Yeah, go ahead.
Withdraw without prejudice.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Somewhere right, somewhere, I guess. Yeah.
I think you'll find, and
Right. Are you coming back, Mr. Chairman, or are you gonna recuse yourself?
I like it right here, right?
Huh? Oh, you can run from there? That's perfect. As long as it's not from your car.
The only item left, I think, is the minutes.
All right.
And the minutes refer to two hearings, one of which I didn't participate in, one of which I did.
All right, so,
Let you take it.
yes, no, so the next thing is the review of the minutes.
folks, the meeting's still going on, so if you want to discuss, feel free to do it outside. Okay, thanks.
So the last order of business we have is the review of the minutes from the June 11th, 2024 meeting. Does anybody have any edits, comments, additions, deletions?
I am puzzled a little bit. There wouldn't be those minutes that had the discussion about what protections we wanted for the abutters on the Jewett Road property for the twins. Now that we've had a response from the planning board. That isn't in those minutes though, is it?
Correct. No, it is not. It's not. We could put that on the, if we want to talk about that, because we could put that on the agenda for the next meeting if we want. Why don't we do that? We'll put that.
So
That's fine.
I move we approve the minutes.
Motion's made to approve the minutes.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Can I vote, given that I was not there for part of the meeting, can I just not vote on that? Does it have to be-
We're on your behalf.
You just say 4 now.
And you just have to abstain from
I'll
the
just
part.
abstain from that. Okay. Well,
All right. And the next order of business will be a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
yeah.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Perfect.
Sure, you set a record.
I know, we didn't have a continuance. That's amazing. See? All right, gavel. Can you gavel for me?
Can we do it?
Yeah.